Donald Trump has deployed a chaotic campaign to intimidate and instill fear in any system or system actor that would oppose them, be that within the state court system, the press, academia, nonprofit space, anyone who can stand in his way.
On the line with us is Maggie Daun, the General Counsel for Civic Media and the host of a live daily talk radio program, The Maggie Daun Show, that is on from 4 to 6 p.m. Across Civic Media, across stations in Wisconsin. And Maggie, welcome to the program. Glad to have you with us.
Thanks, Tom. Great to be here with you.
I see that you were Milwaukee County's chief legal officer from 2017 to 2024, and that you know Judge Dugan, who was famously arrested last week. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I have known Judge Hannah Dugan for many years now. I consider her a friend. And I think what's important for people to know that about Hannah as a person, Hannah has spent her entire lifetime as a lawyer and as a judge working in the public interest. She was the executive director of Catholic Charities here in southeastern Wisconsin. She's worked for a number of legal aid agencies, volunteered her time on attorney ethics panels, and she's been on the bench now, for 9 years. She was elected in 2016 with 65% of the vote. Wow. I say all that to say Judge Dugan is a person who, again, has served her community with distinction and honor, being elected as the Milwaukee Bar Association president once, and again, is a person and judge of good faith and a long record of honorable public service.
So what happened last week? Give us the story, the backstory, and then you know.
Sure. Let's start with perhaps some of the interesting tidbits that I picked up over the weekend. It appears Judge Dugan was arrested in a parking lot, which I am very well familiar with. I used to park in the same lot that the Milwaukee County Circuit Court judges park in. That lot is secured. So if the arrest was indeed effectuated in that lot, also referred to as the annex parking lot, someone would have had to give those agents access to that parking lot. It is secured. You have to have a key card to enter. There are cameras installed. So I am a bit curious as to how those agents gained access to that lot.
Is it staffed? Was there a guard that they could just intimidate with a badge, or is it all had to have a key?
Well, excellent question, Tom. While there is a guard booth that is there, it is unmanned, unwomaned also. And so you do need a key card to enter that annex parking lot. So
interesting.
Just a bit of intrigue there as to how that actually occurred. So my sources are telling me that, again, Judge Dugan was arrested in that parking lot at about 8 a.m. on Friday. She was then swiftly arraigned in federal court before U.S. District Court Judge Stephen Dries at 10:30 a.m. Her attorney on her behalf said that she wholeheartedly regrets and protests her arrest, that it is not in the interests of public safety or justice, and she was released on her own recognizance. I have communicated briefly with Judge Dugan, expressing my unequivocal support of her, which I think is fairly uniform across the attorney and legal community in and around Milwaukee.
My take on this, which I laid out this morning in my daily take and my opening rant last hour on this program, is that Trump is trying to button down basically every aspect of potential protest or anything that might restrain him from becoming, a Vladimir Putin-style dictator. He's already neutered the Article 1 branch Congress. There's not a single Republican in the House or Senate who's willing to stand up and speak out against him. Don Bacon tried last week just with some modest criticism of his tariffs, and within 24 hours was suddenly announcing that he may well be resigning. In other words, he got the word. So he's got Congress neutered, which leaves basically the press, which is not a government agency, but is widely seen as a check on the government agencies, which is now under assault with multiple lawsuits coming out of Donald Trump and the whole 60 Minutes thing and everything else. And then the courts, the Article 3 branch. and not just the courts, the attorneys as well. And he's got all these major law firms that have committed to, do about $1 billion worth, over $900 million worth of free legal services for right-wing causes in the future. And now he's going after judges. And just an hour ago, Carolyn Leavitt said, yes, he would not hesitate to arrest Supreme Court judges. Do you share my concern that this is just a naked attempt to intimidate the Article 3 branch so that he can behave in an unconstrained fashion, and that eventually he may get around to trying to intimidate the Supreme Court itself?
Absolutely, Tom. I think that's precisely what's going on. Donald Trump has deployed a sometimes chaotic seeming, but intention very clear campaign to intimidate and instill fear in any system or system actor that would oppose them, be that within the state court system, the press, academia, nonprofit space, anyone who can stand in his way. What I think is very interesting here is that folks may not recall that in the first Trump administration, by my recollection, both courts in state courts in Massachusetts and the state of New York successfully pursued temporary injunctions preventing ICE and FBI execution of immigration arrests within state courtrooms. Why, might one wonder, would a federal district court enter such an injunction? Well, there's this little old thing called the 10th Amendment and the fact that state court judges have fairly extensive, if not complete, control of their courtrooms. So when you get to the actual, what is the nexus of facts? Where are the operative facts in the criminal complaint, which I have reviewed? Do they actually support the two charges that Judge Dugan is now facing up to 5 years in federal prison regarding? The short answer to that is, of course they don't. They were there executing an administrative, I don't like to call them warrants, administrative pieces of paper signed by who knows what on what knows, any old evidentiary or fact showing that they deem sufficient. In other words, a so-called warrant that is not tested by probable cause. Judge Dugan specifically inquired, do you have a judicial warrant? She was answered, no, we have an administrative warrant. She then went about controlling her courtroom and the persons therein, which she is entitled to do. The idea that the federal government could come into a state courthouse and dictate directly or indirectly how a state court judge runs her courtroom and manages the personnel in the courtroom, including victims, witnesses, and the accused appearing before her, to me, is a 10th Amendment violation, and we need to be deeply concerned of that. And I always ask my more conservative colleagues, what happened to the old states' rights mantra that we used to hear so frequently from our conservative friends? Seems to be completely absent here, which shows the game. I'll make one other brief observation, Tom, if I may, as to the complaint. You would think that obstruction and concealing a person would require actual concealment. In other words, that the person that is, again, being concealed, that the obstruction related to this execution of this so-called administrative warrant, that this person would have to necessarily be for some material period of time in a private or secured location. But the FBI affidavit underlying the criminal complaint says exactly the opposite, that the person that was subject to the so-called administrative warrant was in fact in public spaces, was arrested in a public space after a brief foot chase. So it seems to me that this is a muddled prosecution at best. It is obviously one to instill fear and to intimidate state court judges. And finally, let's not forget the vast majority of safety, which your listeners and mine and everyone is concerned about, those sorts of crimes are state law-based crimes. And the ability to have state courts run their judicial process to keep us all safe in the manner that state law prescribes is extraordinarily important, and that is under direct threat. So as Judge Dugan's lawyer pointed out, this arrest and this putative prosecution does nothing to increase public safety. in Milwaukee County or anywhere in the state of Wisconsin.
Maggie, I just have 2 minutes until we hit a hard break here. I'm curious how the local community is responding to this, and if you expect that response to be sustained, or if this is the sort of thing that the Trump administration believes will blow over, or do they want pushback that they can then like the Kilmar Garcia case, they use it as a way of implying other threats.
Yeah, the only people who bow to federal political operations in the state of Wisconsin, national political party pressures, is the state GOP party. As far as standing up for what is right, standing up for constitutional first principles, the 10th Amendment, the First Amendment, the Fourth Amendment, this is the bread and butter of grassroots organizers and the regular folks of Wisconsin. We know the difference between right and wrong, and it is my opinion that you are going to see sustained protests. Protests began Friday afternoon within hours of Judge Dugan's arrest. I think they're going to continue. I was at a widely attended social event that included many folks in the political arena, conservatives and liberals alike, on Saturday. And my conservative colleagues were privately expressing deep alarm of the Trump administration trying to insert itself into the way that we seek to protect our communities here in the state of Wisconsin. And the fact that it was an outright intimidation tactic, that will not be met kindly here, again, by folks on the street, but also those that are involved in politics and our elected officials. I think you've seen that uniformly from Senator Baldwin to Governor Evers, the county executive, the mayor. Folks are speaking out here, as well as overwhelming support from the Milwaukee Bar, lawyers, and the courts as well. Judges here voicing support for Judge Dugan.
That is great news. Keep us up to date, Maggie, please.
Will do, Tom. Thank you for having me.
Oh, thanks so much for dropping by. Maggie Daun has a talk show 4 to 6 p.m. weekdays, Central Time, on the civic media stations across Wisconsin, and is also an attorney. Maggie, again, really appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Tom.
Yep.